They mocked me for being a black woman mechanic, but I turned their doubt into roars of triumph. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The heat of the sun hammered down on me, making the asphalt of the parking lot shimmer as if it were alive. I stood there, hands trembling, heart thudding. They were all watching. The guys from the garage, my so-called friends. Their laughter sliced through the air, sharp and cruel. "What do you know about engines?" one shouted, his voice dripping with disbelief. I wanted to shrink into the ground, to let the earth swallow me whole, but I didn't. I clutched my wrench, its cold steel a comfort in my grip. I was different. I was the only woman in this world of grease and grit. My father taught me everything. His laughter echoed in my mind as I remembered the way his hands danced over the engine parts, his eyes sparkling with pride when I got it right. They could mock me all they wanted. I was determined to prove them wrong. As I pulled open the hood of the old blue Camaro, the smell of gasoline wafted up. It was intoxicating. I focused on the engine, the intricacies, and the chaos inside. I felt the warmth of the engine radiating against my skin, mixing with the nervous sweat trickling down my back. Each part, each bolt held a story. My fingers glided over the steel as if it was a living thing, sparking electricity beneath my fingertips. I felt alive, their eyes were on me, a mix of skepticism and amusement. I could almost hear the whispers, "Shall never get it running." The thought made my heart race faster. I could feel the pressure building, the need to rise above. I needed to show them that I belonged. Then, just as I was about to start the engine, a sudden crack echoed through the lot. A flash of light burst overhead, and the crowd fell silent. I glanced up, my heart in my throat. Dark clouds rolled in, swallowing the sun whole. The silence felt heavy, like a weight pressing down on all of us. What was happening? I felt a chill creep over me despite the stifling heat. A storm was coming, but it wasn't the weather I feared. It was the doubt that hovered around me like a dark cloud, threatening to drown me out. And then I noticed her, an elderly woman, standing off to the side, her gaze fixed on me. Her face was weathered, stories etched into every wrinkle. She nodded slowly, as if she recognized my fight. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Was it really possible that this was my moment? Suddenly, a voice broke the thick fog of tension. A woman's laugh, bright and unexpected. "Give her a chance. You never know what she can do." My eyes widened. Was she talking about me? I could almost hear my heart beat in my ears, muffled against the sudden surge of adrenaline. But then, before I could process what was happening, the storm broke. Rain poured down, drenching me in seconds. The laughter erupted around me again, but this time it was different. I felt a surge of defiance rush through me. I wouldn't give in. I wouldn't let them drown me out. I clung to the Camaro as the rain beat down, a storm inside me matching the one outside. I drew in a deep breath, ready to face whatever was coming next. But what lay ahead? Would they mock me again, or could I turn this into a moment of strength? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The rain lashed at my face like 1,000 tiny daggers, but the sting was nothing compared to the fire igniting inside me. I could barely think through the chaos. The laughter surrounding me sharpened but mingled with a whisper of doubt, slithering through my mind. I tightened my grip on that wrench, as if it were my only lifeline in the tempest. Look at her. She thinks she can fix that. The voice came from behind me, laced with derision. Yet there was something different in the way they spoke today, something that hinted at vulnerability amid their bravado. I began to make sense of their mirth. It masked fear. Fear of the unknown, embodied by this single black woman mechanic, drenched in rain, refusing to be pinned down by their scorn. But now, a sharp slice of reality broke into my thoughts. Alone among the jeering crowd stood the elderly woman whose presence had kindled a flicker of hope. She didn't laugh. Instead, her eyes, bright and encouraging, seemed to glisten like the rain that streamed down her face. It was as if she was an anchor in the storm, a silent supporter in a sea of mockery. The downpour slackened slightly, and as I wiped the water from my eyes, wide smiles flickered amidst the faces that had once jeered at me. One of the younger mechanics, the one who had initially mocked my knowledge of engines, stepped forward, shaking off drops like a dog emerging from water. "All right then, let's see what you got," he shouted, surprising me with a challenge instead of the ridicule I expected. A wave of adrenaline surged, propelling me forward. I moved to the Camaro, closing my eyes to breathe in the scent of motor oil and gasoline mixed with rain. I opened the hood wide and leaned in, feeling the familiar groove of the engine as my senses came alive with the sound of rain hitting metal, the chatter of the crowd fading for just a moment, but beneath the comforting hum of engine parts lay an unsettling reality. My hands were steady, but my heart raced faster than the engine ever would. What if I failed? What if they had the last laugh? My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for the fuel line. Just as I was about to make my first adjustment, I was halted by a voice that halted me dead in my tracks. "It isn't just about fixing engines, you know." The voice was soft, almost hesitant. I turned to find the elderly woman stepping closer, a serene determination in her gaze. "You're not just fighting for the car, you're fighting for yourself. Remember that." I blinked, surprised by her insight amidst the chaos. She had seen through the layers of my struggle and brought forth the true weight of my battle. I wasn't just a mechanic, nor merely a woman in a man's world. I was a force fueled by my heritage, my father's teachings, and my refusal to fade into the background. Just as I gathered my resolve, the rain quieted almost entirely, creating a surreal calm. It was then I made the most critical decision. I wouldn't just fix the Camaro, I would do it my way. Through hard work and perseverance, not just to silence them, but to honor my father and every woman who had stood where I did, fighting against the odds. I clamped my wrench into position and began, the sound of metal clinking pulling the crowd closer, curiosity replacing mockery. Each twist tightened my grip on my identity. Just as I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me, a loud crash of thunder rumbled ominously, catching everyone's attention, and then I heard it, the sound of a siren, a blaring wail breaking through the air, interrupted only by the gathering storm clouds. It rose above the rain, chilling my spine. Laughter ceased, replaced by concern etched across every face present. I turned toward the parking lot entrance just in time to see police lights flashing ominously against the dark backdrop. "Is this about tonight?" someone shouted, and the sudden concern seemed to ripple through the crowd now, as a feeling of dread gathered around us. I felt my heart drop, the weight of uncertainty crashing down upon me just as heavily as the rain. What had I stepped into? My chance to claim my rightful place had now come at a steep price, and as the sirens grew louder, I sensed that this was only the beginning. The rain began to mix with the tension in the air, and I stood frozen, caught between the impending storm and the pressures of a world so eager to keep me from rising. What would become of my moment of defiance? Would it be the catalyst for change, or just another cruel twist of fate? The sirens wailed louder, crescendoing into a cacophony that drowned out everything else. The world seemed to freeze for a heartbeat, hanging on the precipice of what was to come. My pulse quickened, its erratic rhythm matching the storm rolling above us. I stood at the edge of a precipice, my dreams teetering in the face of impending reality. "Everyone, listen up." A voice boomed over the chaos. The older mechanic who had initially laughed at me stepped forward, his usual swagger replaced by a cautious sincerity. "Let's not freak out. We're not doing anything wrong." I could see the uncertainty flickering in the eyes of my peers, their bravado waning as dread crept into their hearts. I glanced at the elderly woman, her features calm despite the turmoil surrounding us. She nodded softly, as if encouraging me to gather my courage. Please. If we scatter, they'll treat us like we're guilty of something, I blurted out, the words spilling from my lips before I had time to gauge the reaction. We're just here for the love of cars. Let's not give them a reason to think we're anything else. In that moment, the weight of their collective gaze turned to me, and I realized the power of vulnerability. Here was an opportunity to embrace not just my role as a mechanic, but as a beacon of hope, a symbol for all of us together. Courage is contagious, I said, throwing my voice into the tempest, and more than anything right now, we need to face this together. A murmur of agreement rose among them, kindling the first flickers of resilience. I stepped forward, feeling the heat of their expectation as though it could transform into something tangible like the very metal I worked with. The sirens continued their harsh cry, but among us, something began to shift. One by one, individuals stepped closer, forming a united front, an assembly bound by shared passion rather than fear. I caught the eye of the younger mechanic who had first challenged me. He smiled, a tentative yet sincere expression that ignited a flame of camaraderie among us. Right. Stand together. He called, and the sound of fists gently thumping against chests offered a rhythm built from belief. The chaos around us seemed to dim as, together, we faced the flashing lights. In the eye of the storm, hope fluttered, fragile and beautiful among the darkness. I glanced at the elderly woman, who now held my gaze with reverence. I felt the depth of my lineage reflecting through her. This moment was about so much more than just mechanics, it was a battle for dignity and recognition. Suddenly, the police car rolled to a stop, tires screeching against the wet pavement. An officer emerged, stern yet purposeful. With a shaky breath, I stepped forward, my heart racing, adrenaline surging as the crowd fell silent. What is the reason for your presence here? I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. The officer looked around, assessing the gathered crowd beneath the swirling clouds. We received reports of public disturbance, he stated matter-of-factly. It's not safe to be out here, especially with weather like this. I noted the edge in his voice. He wasn't here to intimidate us, but to restore order. Yet, somehow, his arrival felt heavier than usual. A chorus of whispers erupted, weaving through the crowd. Everyone exchanged words filled with apprehension and confusion, and I could feel the pressure building against the fragile bubble of hope we had begun to form. Just trying to fix a car. Someone shouted, breaking the uneasy silence. That's when I took a step back, my mind racing with strategies. We weren't here just to fix a car, we were fighting for our place in a world that had so often looked away. As long as we are here and not causing trouble, we have the right to be here. I shouted, invigorated by the surge of collective power. This is about our passion. You can't take that away from us. The officer's gaze softened slightly, but I could see the struggle within him. The tension hung thick in the air, coiling around us like a serpent poised to strike. With every heartbeat, my confidence seemed to leap forward, yet behind it lingered a deep-seated fear. What would happen if he decided we were a problem? Would we be chased away, or worse, arrested for merely existing in this moment of defiance? As I braced for the response, I felt a familiar hand grasp mine. The elderly woman stood beside me, her fingers wrapping around mine like a lifeline. Sometimes it takes one voice to lead a chorus, she whispered, her words soothing amid the storm. A silent understanding passed between us. I had the chance to turn this moment into a catalyst for change, not just for me, but for all of us. And yet, as I opened my mouth to speak once more, ready to solidify our stance, the crowd suddenly shifted. A figure emerged from the shadows behind the Office-era face I had not anticipated. My stomach dropped, and the world around me blurred momentarily. It was Glenn, my estranged father, stepping forward. The memories flooded back, jagged edges piercing through the calm I had cradled. What could he possibly want now? I thought I had escaped his shadow, but here he was, the embodiment of my conflicting emotions laid bare before me. Disbelief painted the scene lush with turmoil, and I stood paralyzed, caught between the fight for my identity and the unsolved puzzle of my past. The air crackled with potential as every gaze turned from the officer to him. This was far from over, and now the stakes had escalated. The wind whipped around me, a chilling reminder of my place between two conflicting worlds. Nothing seemed more daunting than facing Glenn here, under the agitated skies, in front of the crowd that had rallied beside me moments before. I struggled with the weight of my emotions, trying to balance the fierce pride I felt for my community with the surge of pain that accompanied my father's presence. Glenn's eyes locked onto mine, revealing a deep well of regret and something else I couldn't quite name. I caught a flicker of hope there, a desperate wish for reconciliation perhaps. Or was it merely a reflection of my own desire to heal old wounds? The thing is, I wasn't ready. I had shielded myself from his abandonment for so long, allowing my love for mechanics and my chosen family to fill the void he left. But now, standing just a few feet away, that emptiness threatened to engulf me once again. "Get back!" an officer shouted, snapping me back into the moment. I turned to see the fear returning to my peers' faces, their earlier bravery beginning to crack. There was no time to dwell on my father's presence. I needed to calm them, to redirect this circus of uncertainties. "Listen." I raised my voice, cutting through the murmur of confusion. "Glenn is my father. But that doesn't change why we're here." My heart thundered as I spoke. "We're not breaking the law, we're celebrating our craft. We shouldn't let past wounds derail our current fight." Glenn opened his mouth to speak, but I plowed ahead, telling the crowd, "This is a space where we belong. A place where our passion thrives. Together, we've persisted, broken barriers, and redefined who we are." I was surprised to feel adrenaline course through me, mingling with the anguish I'd felt moments earlier. If I could only channel this, perhaps the crowd would mirror my resolve. A few steps from the front, a woman who had been silent until now finally shouted, "You know what? He doesn't represent us. We're here for each other." A wave of affirmation surged through the crowd. But my focus was still locked on Glenn. "You can't just show up when it's convenient," I added, my voice laced with a mix of anger and hurt. "Not when you abandoned me, when you chose your own path over mine." His expression flickered with something akin to remorse, yet it also held an unspoken challenge, as if he were daring me to open up. He pointed away from the chaos, towards the deeper shadows of the parking lot, as if to suggest we talk elsewhere. "Zara, please." His voice was low, strained, yet earnest. "I didn't come to cause a scene. I came to talk." I shook my head, heart racing. "This isn't just about us. This moment transcends our fractured history. This is about proving we belong in this space. I fought too hard to let you disrupt that." My chest tightened with every word, each breath heavy with uncertainty. The crowd watched, desperate for resolution, but I struggled with my own paradox. With a deep breath, I turned back to my peers. "Stay strong, everyone. We're in this together." A gesture illuminated faces among them, small but bright fists held high, hearts beating in unison. The officer's voice broke through again, a mixture of authority and resolve. "You all need to disperse. This isn't the time or place." He stepped forward. "Show me your licenses and permits. Can we handle this calmly?" The crowd shifted restlessly, mirrored in the click of cameras capturing the disarray. A few started to move back, fear creeping in like a pulse beneath the collective skin. What if we were arrested? What if they undermined everything we'd built in this moment? But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw the elderly woman I had stood beside earlier, her kind smile holding me steady amidst the whirlwind. She moved forward, reclaiming my attention. "No!" she cried out, her voice round and full. "These young folks deserve their space and their fight. They're bringing life when others would snuff it out." Each word rang with authority, wrapping around us all like armor. "Speak!" someone shouted, and the murmurs shifted again, renewed energy someone unexpected had sparked. Mouth dry, I glanced back at Glenn, who seemed to hesitate, grappling between right and wrong. "I don't want your intervention," I pressed, my eyes fixed on both him and the officer. "None of us do." We refused to be silenced. The standoff felt suffocating as the officers exchanged glances, their locally patrolling grips tightening. Glenn, at long last, took a bold step forward, but instead of confronting me, he turned his back to the crowd and faced the officers straight on. "Let them think, let them fix their cars," he declared, a surprising authority breaking through. "They're not the problem, you'll make them the problem if you arrest them." What? My heart sank in disbelief, conflict stirring anew. Was he defending us, or was this yet another hidden agenda? Hope and despair swirled in a dizzying dance. Suddenly the air changed, the sirens dulled, as if the storm above us shifted gears, ready to unleash its fury. Just then, a new voice joined the fray, slicing through our hesitations. "I can't believe you'd stand for them, Glenn." A man in the crowd jeered. "What do you really want?" The tension was thick against the swirling chaos, the lantern light sighing as shadows danced. "Tell them," he urged, his voice cutting sharply through the mist of uncertainty. For a moment, all eyes were on me as I fought to keep the fragile bond of solidarity, but then, just then, a sharp crack echoed above us. A blast of thunder rumbled ominously, scattering rain almost forcefully from the skies. My heart raced. I turned to the crowd, panic flickering behind my restrained resolve. Could we stand strong when everything felt like it was unraveling? "Stay with me," I shouted above the worsening storm, unsure if I was rallying them or myself. But as rain poured down, washing over our skin like promises of rebirth, I suddenly feared this uprising was about to be tested, and from the spot where Glenn stood, I saw his brow furrow, gaze darting back to the chaotic scene. My mind swirled. Each second stretched painfully as I began to understand, things were about to shatter, and amidst the impending storm, I had to be the one to hold our fragile dreams together. Yet a single thought lingered within me: could I remain a beacon when the foundations began to crack? The rain beat down in relentless sheets, a cacophony of nature's fury echoing my own inner tumult. The crowd, once unified in their chants, began to scatter under the sheer force of the storm. Faces turned anxious, glancing at each other as the weight of uncertainty pressed down harder than the deluge. I could feel the breath of my resolve trembling, as if alongside me, it too wavered against the gusts of conflict swirling around us. "Zara." Glenn's voice was thick with urgency, pulling at every thread of my guarded heart. I took a deep breath, willing myself to hold my ground. "You can't let them disperse like this. They need you." My eyes narrowed on him, the man who had once been my entire world and now felt like a specter of my past. "You think this storm intimidates me? I've faced worse." The words came out sharper than I intended, and yet I meant them. I wasn't afraid of the rain or the officers. I was terrified of losing the momentum of what we had built, the connections and the dreams woven through our shared spirit. The elderly woman I had been drawn to stood resolute at the front, arms wrapped tightly around her own frame. "We've come too far," she called out, her voice steady against the chaotic backdrop. "Don't let the storm steal your light." Her words ignited something in me again, igniting that flicker of hope that had almost extinguished amidst Glenn's presence. My heart raced as I took a step forward, ignoring the pulsing beat of doubt that threatened to pull me under. "Remember why we're fighting," I shouted, letting the words rip free. "Not just for our livelihoods, but for the community we've built. For every voice that has been silenced and every spark of creativity that's been oppressed." Each syllable carried the weight of my conviction, charged with the energy of the crowd gradually coalescing back together, ignited by her rallying call. But just as our spirits began to rise, the officers pushed forward once more, their expressions a hardened mask against the tumbling chaos. "We will do our duty," one barked, a sense of urgency spitting from his lips. "Disperse now, or we'll take action." Glenn turned sharply, his shoulders tense. "You think your duty justifies constraining our freedom? You are enforcing oppression." The flash of anger ignited a fire within me, and I felt a rush of gratitude for his unexpected defense, awkward and raw as it was. At this moment, perhaps he was not entirely lost to me, but the audience was more than just spectators, they were the lifeblood of my fight. I spun back to them, heart racing, caught between the clashing storm of emotions. "Look, we've come together today. This is our chance to become more than the labels they impose on us. We can't let a few threats undermine everything." Another clap of thunder that made us all flinch. And just as I thought I'd lost them again, a chorus of agreement rose from the crowd, faces illuminated by flickering hopes. Yes. Together. They shouted, fists raised as the essence of the community pulsed across the ground, but then, amidst the chorus, it hit Mimi's own voice, the one that had been silenced time and again, was key to the truth rising amidst this storm. They mock us because they fear us. They fear this very moment, the solidarity we share and our refusal to back down. I paused, grounding myself in the steady downpour. No more will we be the whispers in the dark, drowning in shame. We are the roars of triumph, the energy shifted. In that moment, something deep within me cracked open, and a wellspring of voices erupted around me. The rain might have intensified, but so had the unit. Your chants roared like thunder in the skies. In that swell of sound, I could feel a moment in it me past seeping away, like water carving through stone, softer than expected yet relentless in its path, but through the assertive power came a hint of danger, and as I locked eyes with Glenn once more, I could see a dawn of realization. You were never a disgrace, Zara, he rasped, the incredulity of his own mind breaking into a softening vulnerability. You're everything I failed to be. Even my breath caught. Could this be the moment where he finally recognized the depth of my struggles? Or was this yet another attempt at manipulation cloaked in heartfelt words? Doubt tugged at my heart, threatening to pull me back into a whirlpool of unresolved emotions. As hope flickered, it felt dangerously close to despair. Suddenly, the voice that had resounded moments before sharp and questioning, charged with animosity, cut through my thoughts again. You really believe you can change this, don't you, Zara? You think playing hero will erase your past? I turned, my skin prickling with recognition and dread. Abel, a former peer turned critic, stepped closer, unwelcome memories underlining his challenge. The crowd turned uncertainly, absorbing the tension crackling in the air that I swallowed hard, heart racing. Believe in me or not, I will fight. And beneath us, I could feel the world shift, the forces around me gathering storm, echoing questions I didn't yet know how to answer. The storm still raged above us, yet in the eye of that chaos, choices loomed large and unrelenting, a path to confront not just our oppressors but our histories. As the tempest rumbled, I braced myself for the waves of confrontation that lay ahead, knowing there were truths waiting to surface. Stay together. I shouted over the downpour, no matter what, we fight. Yet dread lay heavy. Abel's words lingered like the faintest blur on the rainy canvas of powerful defiance. Would my past determine the strength of my future, or would I rise above its haunting shadows? And as lightning sliced through the sky, illuminating the darkened line of battle ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling, the real storm had only just begun. The relentless rain continued to beat down as if nature itself could sense the tempest within me. I could feel the tension crackling around the crowd, a fragile fabric of hope tenuously woven against the onslaught of fear creeping in from the fringes. Every whispered doubt from the naysayers rang in my ears, each jeer from the past echoing like thunder. Just as their shouts were heavy with condescension, so too were my thoughts weighed down by the ghosts of my own failures. With my heart pounding, I turned my back on Abel's piercing gaze, forcing myself to focus instead on the faces surrounding me. Some wore the weariness of doubt, while others beamed with a fervent spark. We have to show them our strength. I shouted, my voice rising above the tumult. They want us to scatter, they want us to feel weak. But look at each other. Look at what we have built together. A wave of claps rippled through the crowd, albeit faltering as uncertainty mingled with the ranks. Glenn, standing just behind me, placed a firm hand on my shoulder, reminding me of his presence, a comfort and a complication all at once. You've got this, Zara, he said, his words low but carrying a weight heavier than the storm itself. His belief ignited a flicker of drive within me until I turned towards Abel again, the remnants of doubt swirling like eddies in the churning sea of my heart. What do you know of my fight, Abel? How can you mock resilience when you've never dared to bear its weight? The crowd shifted uneasily as they grasped the confrontation brewing on the precipice of this moment. My voice cracked against the brewing storm, but I couldn't let his scorn drown me. The thunder rolled again, and with it came a shared breath from those close by, as if they were preparing for something colossal. Everyone has a story, and mine doesn't erase your past, Abel shouted back, stepping closer, the rain now mingling with the fervor of his words. But you aren't the only one who's had to fight for recognition or to claim a place where they belong. The crowd leaned in, caught in the tension. I opened my mouth to respond, but my voice faltered. In that ragged space of silence, I felt my resolve crack, allowing a rush of vulnerability to flood in. But I am fighting, I managed, for every young girl who feels voiceless. For all the ones who've been marred by a lifetime of striving for acceptance. The weight of my words hung in the air, brighter than the moon momentarily peeking through the clouds. Around us, the crowd began to resonate with vulnerability. I could see them processing their existence, our existence, the shared struggle of every single person present on this dilapidated street. Just then, an elderly man at the front, one I had never seen before, stepped forward. His skin was weathered, his eyes glinting with a fierce glint of knowing. "Talk is easy, Zara. What will you do when the words run dry?" His voice trembled with age and experience, and the truth of it struck a chord deep within me. "Show up every day," I breathed, almost to myself. "Advocate for every voice, every story. I stand here, in this storm, to remind us all that we exist and exist loudly. You can question my past, but don't question my tenacity." Hope flickered again, threading like needle through fabric as the crowd began to murmur their agreement, amplifying with each beat of thunder. I felt the energy shift until it was palpable, fire and solidarity coursing through every single being, yet, in that moment of rising determination, a rift cracked through the air again. Glenn stepped away from me, and I caught his expression twisting. The resolve I felt started to shatter as he moved towards Abel, the space between us stretching painfully. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Zara," he began, desperation lacing his tone, but for understanding that a horror welled up inside me. Was he truly seeking a bridge to those who had once scoffed at us, at our dreams? "What do you even understand about real fight, Glenn?" I stepped forward, adrenaline pumping, my voice strong. "You were just as complicit in erasing our voices," and just then, the moment teetered on a knife's edge. Voices murmured in doubt around me, the magic we had built momentarily faltered. In that desperate breath, I saw a flicker of my past splintering into my present, pulling at the frayed threads of my heart. Abel's words echoed once more, "You really think you can change this?" As if on cue, my knees buckled, memories colliding with the presented composite of triumphs and failures, engraved in my skin, the sacrifices echoing in my bones. "I want to," I rasped, panic curling in my belly. "But I need to know I'm not fighting alone." But as I glanced at Glenn, I could see the struggle reflected in his eyes, uncertainty grappling with impatience, and fear weighing heavily on him. Would I lose him in the very battle I sought to win? The rain poured, nearly drowning my thoughts, but then something else emerged from the Shadowsa wave of unexpected kindness. A woman beside me, her features illuminated in the flickering light, reached across to hold my hand tightly. "You're not alone, Zara. We're with you." One by one, hands joined, voices lifted, their strength pushing back against the storm and its pushing winds, but then, the shaking voice of an officer rang out, slicing through the moment with harsh authority. "You've made your choice, now face the consequences. Disperse or be detained." The air thickened, and as I turned my gaze back to the cowering crowd, dread whispered through me. Uncertainty bled into our collective resolve, yet a wave surged atop my rising panic, an unwavering fire that ignited fiercely in my belly. For every word of chaos that threatened to unsettle us, I had to stoke the flames of defiance back into that rush of vulnerability. "Maybe we've come too far to turn back now. Think of what we could lose," I shouted as the rain doused its fury onto the resolute ground, opposition swirling like the storm clouds above. But before I could gather more thoughts, a flash of lightning struck so close that the ground vibrated beneath our feet, illuminating the chaos ahead. In that moment, I saw Glenn facing Abel, but then Glenn turned, his expression hardening. "I'll stand by you, Zara, but can you stand for me?" The ultimatum hung in the air like an unsettled storm cloud, waiting, crackling with uncertainty, and dread began to worm its way back in through the cracks of hope. My heart raced beneath the culmination of forces around me, unity precariously balanced on a fulcrum of possibility. Would I rise to the challenge, or would I falter amid the swirling doubts and histories I could not escape? As another wave of rain drenched all sense and clarity, I felt the ground shift beneath us, unyielding and chaotic. Would hope triumph over despair as I stood on the precipice, or could the storm drag us all back into the shadows? The future loomed, dangerous and cloaked, whispering its uncertain truths just beyond reach. The world felt as though it was splintering around me, each raindrop mingling with the anxiety simmering in my chest. Glenn's words echoed in my mind, sharp as shards of glass, reminding me that there were things at stake greater than just personal pride. Real lives, real futures hung in the balance. I looked at the crowd, a sea of faces both familiar and alien, united in their fight but each carrying their own burdens of history, of pain. Can we stand together? I called out, my voice cutting through the wind and rain. Not just for me, not just for Glenn, but for everyone who has ever felt unseen. For those of us who have spent our lives fighting to be recognized. The crowd suddenly seemed to spark to life, a chorus of voices rising like a meal served over shared history. But doubt was still present, lurking. I glanced sideways at Glenn, who stood rooted, his jaw clenched. Glenn, please, just trust me. We changed the narrative together. He met my gaze, and in that moment I caught a glimpse of his internal struggle, the weight of his past transgressions against the backdrop of my fierce hope. And then, unexpectedly, I saw the faintest shift in his expression, a glimmering resolve forming amidst the turmoil. It filled me with a sense of quiet strength that I desperately needed. Before I could say anything more, the officer's voice boomed through the air again, sharper than the crack of thunder. You have 2 minutes. Either leave now or face the consequences. In that moment, the specter of fear crept back into our shared resolve. The crowd, once brimming with defiance, began to murmur uncertainly, glancing around as if searching for a path toward safety. Faces that had once beamed with courage turned ghostly pale, the winds of doubt pulling us apart like a fraying rope. Look. I shouted again, desperation tinging my voice. Look at what we've done. We've already changed things by just being here. Do you not see it? They fear us, and that's why they want us gone. My heart thundered loudly, I could feel the pulse of every person around me. A surge of determination welled up from within the crowd. The old man I had seen earlier stepped forward, waving his cane, his voice fighting against the storm. I've seen too many battles lost because we let fear dictate our choices. Stand, my friends. We are not just voice or a movement. Miraculously, the dampened energy shifted again, igniting like live wire as solidarity swirled upward, catching fire. I could see it now, faces turning resolute, hands clenching into fists, a united front. We are the storm. I called out, letting my heart pulse with an unfamiliar rhythm, letting my voice rise and fall like the winds around us, yet still, fear lingered in the fringes of the crowd. A chorus of whispers came from the back as a woman broke away from the throng, her eyes wide and fearful. What if they're right? What if we're wrong? She cried out, stricken. I can't then leave. I shot back, my voice harsher than I intended. But know this, strength comes from vulnerability. Fear can only conquer if we allow it to. A palpable silence enveloped us before a thick silence filled the air, a collective breath on the brink of despair. Suddenly, a familiar face emerged from the shadows at the edge of the gathering. It was Marisol, my childhood friend, her presence both a balm and a sharp reminder of everything that lay ahead. We're all scared, but I would rather be terrified together. I'd rather fight and fall with you all than run away and regret I didn't try. Her declaration rippled through the crowd, blossoming like a sapling determined to break through concrete. Uncertainty faded into the background as voices began intertwining, weaving tales of struggle, stubborn determination, and shared dreams. But just as the tide of hope began roaring higher, embracing us like a warm blanket against the rain, an ear-splitting crack of thunder made me reach for Glenn. The officer's face hardened, frustration evident as he organized the swell of authority behind him. Last warning. He shouted, point blank, sending some of the crowd backing away, nobody is above us. I called into the tumult, feeling the chains of fear start to rattle against the constraints of what others might want me to be. We are the embodiment of a million dreams that have been silenced. Let's dethrone that fear. In the distance, a shrouded figure emerged from the darkness, sharp-tinted against the flash of lightning. My breath caught as I tried to decipher their identity. My heart raced when I recognized her. It was my mother. Her presence, stark against the storm's fury, anchored me even as worry crested in my chest. No matter what happens, Zara, I'm proud of you. You're not just fighting for yourself, but for those who feel they can't stand. Her words, a clarion call through the din, made forward motion impossibly clearer but also deeply terrifying. I turned back to the crowd, my heart dancing between doubt and the fiery echoes of hope, my eyes seeking Glenn's. But the moment of clarity shattered as chaos erupted. A metal barrier was thrown down by an unseen hand in a sea of unrest, slamming heavily into the street, and I felt the ground vibrate with it. A surge of chaos rippled through us, glancing blows of uncertainty rushing back in, fear anew. My pulse quickened. Was this our moment of glory or our moment of that desperate fracture? As I scanned the crowd, wide-eyed and watchful, I felt the brewing storm inside of me rise to an eruption. Would we pull together as one, striking back against the chaos, or retreat in the face of fear? I need to know. I screamed into the tumult, raising my arms, hoping to galvanize the hearts around me. Together, will we stand or will we fall? But even as the answer seemed to shimmer just out of reach, the rain poured harder, each drop seeming to echo the tension spiraling toward the edge of release, as if nature itself was holding its breath for the answer. The downpour intensified, drenching us as though the heavens themselves were mourning the struggling spirit of the crowd. I looked around, eyes darting between faces etched with scars of resilience and lines of doubt. The clamor of uncertainty swirled around us like a tempest, trapping me between the twin pillars of hope and fear. Glenn's steely gaze pierced me, holding 1,000 unspoken words, as if he, too, were grappling with the weight of everything both inside and outside our gathering. Together, I urged, my voice rising above the roar of the storm. Let us be a force that cannot be ignored. Let us turn our fear into courage and our courage into action. My words hung in the charged air, but the chaos began to shift beneath us. People took tentative steps forward, propelled by a mix of reluctance and an implicit camaraderie that reverberated through their veins. The whispers of doubt receded, if only slightly, emboldened by shared vulnerability, and then, just as I thought we might transcend the fear that gripped us, I saw a glint of silver in the approaching darkness. An officer raised their baton, brandishing it like a sword drawn against a once peaceful assembly. Roused from my conviction, I felt my heart plunge as the realization of our plight hit me. The stakes were escalating. Stay together. Don't let them fracture us. I shouted, my voice strained yet fierce. As the officer barked orders to his squad, the crowd shifted uneasily, uncertainty snaking through like wildfire. My heart raced, not just from fear but from the palpable energy that coursed through everyone gathered. Zara. Marisol's voice sliced through the rain. She gripped my arm, nail marks like constellations on my skin. We can't let this turn violent. We need to show them that we are not the enemy. I nodded, steeped in the urgency to find a bridge amidst the rising hostility. You're right. We won't let them dictate our prose. Instead, let's center our message on love, resilience, and unity. Suddenly, Glenn stepped away from me, moving toward the front of the crowd, his frame radiating a reluctant intensity. I felt the moment ripple around us, a collective breath hanging in the air as they turned to watch him. Fear lived in his eyes, yet something deeper swirled beneath. I instinctively reached for him, but couldn't break through the tension that enveloped us. Please, listen, Glenn began, his voice trembling but resolute. We have the power, together, to change the entire narrative, but it has to be with our heads held high, not by allowing them to provoke us into a fight we've already lost. His words struck me, a strange sense of clarity cementing around the storm of uncertainty. Beneath the tumult of this external battle lay an internal struggle of empathy and defiance that wrapped itself around each person present. I could see it in their faces, the conflict, the yearning to be heard, the fear of what could happen if we stood our ground. Yes. I shouted, echoing his plea as I joined him at the forefront of the crowd. Yes. Each of us has a voice that deserves to be heard. Our differences aren't flaws, they're the tools that build a foundation of strength. Together, we are unstoppable. The crowd began to respond, hesitant murmurs rising like the ebbing tide before a great wave. Hands clutched one another, forming an unyielding chain of solidarity. I felt the warmth of that connection seep into my chest, knitting together threads of countless shared struggles, but just then, the officer swung his baton, signaling for the first of his force to step forward. My heart dropped as the situation shifted into a tightrope walk over a chasm of panic. Please. I called out, desperately searching for a way to stave off conflict as the fear of chaos engulfed our circle. Can't we talk? Let us express ourselves. We are not the enemy. This is simply our plea to exist in a world that has long forgotten us. An overwhelming roar surged from the crowd, a swell that pushed against the officers like a tidal wave. But before I could process the momentum, everything changed in a heartbeat. The first punch was thrown, the violence a ripple that splintered through us. I felt my insides twist as several people around me began to falter, lost amidst the fray. Glenn. I cried, desperately seeking him through the tumult. My heart raced, shifting between the urgency to support him and the overwhelming urge to pull back everyone into safety. Stay where you are. He shouted from the front as tensions erupted around him. He stood valiantly at the front, while I realized just how deeply ingrained the fight had become, how the fear of losing this moment could devour us whole. That my mind raced. One spark, one touch of fire, and the fragile hope we had nurtured could disappear amidst the carnage. Then, the unthinkable happened. A flash erupted from the edge of the chaotic scene, scattering a silent message through the air, a message of division, undercurrents of betrayal in the very ranks that stood with us. A tall figure stepped into the clearing, cloaked in shadow, their obscured face sending tremors of recognition down my spine as understanding dawned like a thunderclap. It was someone I had thought left behind, someone who knew my heart and my past, someone who could unravel all that we fought for. Why are you here? I whispered into the chaos, grounding myself against the turmoil of emotions battling to consume me, but before I could grasp the full breadth of this wild revelation, the crowd surged, and the line between solidarity and fear blurred. My heart raced, the world began to shatter beneath my feet. Would we prevail, or would this moment define our demise? Would the price of freedom be our bodies asleep on the pavement, or would we rise glorious in a chorus of defiance? My voice rose once more in the tumult, but the uncertain futures pulsed like the very heartbeat of the rain above. Together, will we stand or will we fall? I pleaded, my spirit aflame against the growing tide. Would there be an answer in the depths of this hullabaloo, or were we destined to drown in chaos? The tremors of panic reverberated through me as I struggled to comprehend the familiar silhouette emerging from the shadows. The chaos around us blurred into a dull roar as my eyes fixated on the figure whose presence could either ignite my spirit or extinguish it altogether. My heart raced uncontrollably at the thought of confronting someone from my past amidst this upheaval. Zara, the figure called, voice laced with an unsettling familiarity. I dared not respond, fearing the weight behind that single word would pull me into a whirlpool of memories I had fought so hard to bury. Glenn's voice cut through the clamor. Keep your heads. This is what they want, a vision. He looked back at me, eyes fierce yet filled with worry. I could see his resolve falter as the figure stepped closer, each stride steeped in confusion and turmoil. The crowd surged forward, as if drawn by magnetism towards this shadow from my past, but I held fast, rooted to the ground. Who are you? I called out, my voice barely rising above the din. Why now? I'm here because. The figure hesitated, as if the weight of their own words threatened to suffocate them. Because I couldn't stay away, not after everything we fought for. I didn't realize how far you'd fallen. I didn't want it to end like this. My breath caught in my throat, emotions ricocheting between anger, betrayal, and something dangerously close to longing. This is not about us. I shot back, using the frustration to shield the vulnerability creeping into my heart. This is about everyone drowning in the same fears, the same struggles. You can't just waltz in and act like it's about you. A flicker of pain danced across their eyes, cutting through the chaos like a flash of lightning. I came to help, Zara. I want to change things, but I can't do it alone. You abandoned us. I spat, my voice quivering as memories of shared laughter and dashed hopes washed over me, mingling with the rain that flew sideways. Solace comes from shared struggle, yet you turned away when we needed you most. Just then, a woman nearby, a stranger with fierce determination in her eyes, approached the two of us. We don't need to tear each other down, she said, her voice a steady foundation amid the tremors of doubt. We need each other now more than ever. She extended her hand towards the figure, a symbol of truce that threw me deeper into uncertainty. That I don't know if I can trust you again, I confessed, my heart a storm of conflicting wishes. The unity we had fought so desperately to establish felt threadbare in that moment. The last time you were around, everything fell apart, but instead of recoiling, the figure bowed their head, a gesture of humility that caught me off guard. I know I have no right to ask for your trust. All I'm asking for is a chance to prove I want to fight beside you. The sincerity in their voice painted the scene with new colors, risking to blur the edges of my memories into something more compassionate. As the shouting intensified and tension wrapped itself around our formation like a serpent, I could feel my heart straining against the walls of its own making. Within this duality of conflict and connection, I saw Glenn watching from a distance, the flickering light of hope and dread dancing in his eyes. Together, I whispered, feeling my lips curl into a thin line as I considered the possibility of repairing the rift. We have to commit to standing together, even if it feels reckless. The figure's eyes widened, and for a heartbeat, we shared a moment of understanding forged through the fires of our past. The crowd became a cacophony of voices, but my focus was solely fixed on them. If we can rally everyone to rise above this and focus on a common purpose, we might just hold on to this moment. Glenn stepped closer, catching my eye as if urging me to trust my instincts. Zara, you've always been the one to light the path forward. His support wrapped around me like a warm embrace, rekindling the belief that a flame could still burn within the clamor. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the air, snapping me back to the present and dousing any lingering hope. A flare erupted from the officer's side, illuminating the field and igniting a wave of hysteria. People gasped and shrank back, fear making its rounds. The promise we'd tried to forge felt precariously close to slipping away as the distant chaos surged closer. What now? I wondered aloud, half to myself, half to those who stood with me. It was a desperate plea filtered through a gleam of determination, the hard truth magnified in the light of the flare. Our unity was fragile, yet we were bound together, caught in the throes of something far larger than our individual fears. That I took a breath, looking back at the figure alongside me. This moment, this gathering, this fight was about reclaiming our voices, and if I had to brave the storm of my history, wasn't it worth the risk to fight side by side? But before I could speak, the unexpected happened. Another Afikara new presence among their ranks advanced forward, eyes locked onto the thrumming pulse of our group. Stand down! They shouted through the chaos, voice booming yet strangely calm. The authority in their stance and tone whispered something entirely different, a promise or perhaps a glimpse of hope amidst the storm. My heart pounded as I tried to fathom what this change would mean. Were we about to be met with hostility or a possibility of dialogue? My pulse thundered in my ears, and I turned to Glenn, uncertainty dancing between us, but before we could grasp the implications, a second flare shot through the air, igniting the excitement and tension to an even higher pitch. The officer's call for peace hung in the air like a fragile promise, but reality threatened to unfold in chaos once more. Would unity prevail, or would the reckoning unravel everything we had worked towards? In those heart-stopping moments, the threshold between hope and despair felt impossibly thin. The stage was set for an answer that could change everything if we dared to stand and face it together. And as the figure beside me met my gaze, I realized we stood on the precipice of our past, present, and a future that trembled with possibility, but at what cost? The winds howled fiercely as the thunder rolled overhead, a ferocious reminder of the tempest brewing both in the sky and within the hearts of those gathered. My thoughts tumbled in disarray, fueled by the flares lighting the way to our uncertain futures. Each heartbeat felt like an echo of my ancestors urging me forward, a surge of strength demanding I take the stand I had fought so tirelessly for that I faced the figure beside me past, my pain, the breath of betrayal mingling with fleeting hope written all over their face. They were not the only one who had stumbled along the path of reckoning, I was too, but perhaps this moment could be an opportunity ripe with possibilities. The air crackled, tension palpable, yet within that tension lay the chance for reconciliation not just between us, but among everyone who had ever felt the weight of unspoken truths. Together, I whispered, gripping their hand as if it could tether our destinies. I felt a cascade of warmth radiate through our connection, an acknowledgement that transcended the failures of yesterday. We can show them this isn't just a battle, it's a reclamation. We're not just mechanics or fighters, we're warriors of change. As I spoke, I sensed Glenn stepping closer, his presence folding into the fabric of our gathering, a stitch completing the patchwork of our collective cause. His gaze bore into mine, filled with an unwavering determination, a look I had yearned to see from him for so long. "Zara," he said, voice steady, "if you can forgive the past, if we can forgive each other, we stand a chance at changing everything." And in that moment, I finally found clarity. My heart surged with love for my craft, love for my peers, and yes, love for the man who had caused me so much pain but now stood beside me, willing to fight through our differences. "You're right, Glenn," I breathed, allowing the weight of my sorrow to ease just a fraction. "Forgiveness is the fuel we need to ignite this change." The crowd, sensing the shift in momentum, grew restless, their energy morphing from anxious whispers to a collective heartbeat thrumming against the storm. "Together, we rise!" I shouted into the deluge, my voice a clarion call, pulling their eyes toward us once more. "Together, we redefine what it means to be heard." The rumble of our unity grew, each chant woven into the sound of the rain, each voice linking with the other until we became a symphony. Glenn took my hand, the warmth of his grasp grounding me amidst the chaos, and I turned to the figure at my side, whose fragile heart intertwined with mine in that moment of reckoning, and then inspiration struck, an idea that felt like a revelation enlivened by the storm surrounding us. "What if," I suggested, rounding my peers with a fierce glint in my eye, "we establish our own space? A place for all of us to belong fully, where no one feels invisible, no voice goes unheard." Gasps rippled through the crowd, possibilities igniting in the minds of those listening. I saw it reflected in their faces, hope, interest, unity brewing like the clouds overhead. Our passion for mechanics, for working with our hands, let's use it to build a community. A sanctuary where every person, every identity is welcomed, where misconceptions cannot flourish because we stand proudly together against them. "Not just a garage," Glenn chipped in, his voice filled with newfound fervor. "A workshop, a school where we can teach others to break the barriers. It's about knowledge shared, skills passed down, about showing everyone that this isn't just our fight, it's everyone's fight." "Yes!" I shouted, the crowd igniting further. People began to chant, our energy magnetic, and for the first time since this storm began, I felt vulnerable yet victorious. The officers, once glaring figures poised to suppress, now seemed almost bewildered by the collective spirit unraveling before them. In that flickering moment, I turned to the elderly woman who had witnessed my plight from the sidelines. "We can be the storm," I called out, heart racing wildly as realization washed over us all. "Together, let's teach the next generation what it feels like to have their voices heard, to know they're valued not just here, but everywhere." Thunder clapped overhead as the crowd roused into a frenzy of agreement, growing louder until it felt almost serenic in its vibrancy. They were no longer just a group of mechanics battling ridicule, they were activists, survivors, individuals daring to reclaim their narrative within a span that seemed larger than life itself. Glenn's grip tightened around my hand. "Can you feel it?" he murmured, disbelief mingling with awe in his tone. This is bigger than any of us." And as the rain drenched us to the bone, washing away the fear, the doubts, and the hesitation, the gusts of wind felt more like a fierce embrace, a promise that we would forge this path together, even against the odds. At that moment, a surge of insight washed over me. What I had once deemed a collision of past and present transformed into a space where healing could breathe freely. I turned to the ominous shadows that had plagued my memories, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the power to release them. "Every one of us needs to know that our story matters," I declared, passion igniting the spark within me. "We are not simply part of a mechanic's legacy, we stand on the shoulders of many who fought for their voices to be heard. We lift each other up or we fall, but today, we choose to rise," and as our voices united into a crescendo, transcending fear and expectation alike, I caught Glenn's gaze for a precious moment, the promises of what lay ahead shining like the stars peeking through the storm clouds. We were a community composed of 1,000 struggles, yet bound through the relentless tether of love. Yes, we were drenched in rain, in uncertainty, in battling realities, but at long last, we held tight the shining clarity of our combined futures. Together we stood, our roots intertwining beneath the surface, stronger now than any storm could ever hope to unearth. In that moment, the weight of my journey felt lighter, my spirit soaring amidst the whistling winds of change. "Together," I cried one last time, thrusting my fist into the storm-laden sky, the finality enveloping that singular word, wrapping us up against the looming shadows of the past and the uncertainty of the future. "Together, we are unstoppable," and in the electrifying stillness, I found myself where I had always dreamed to be, live, tenacious, unapologetically me, each heartbeat pulsing in unison with the strength of those who stood beside me. From that moment on, I knew I would never stand alone again. The storm might rage, but we would transform that tempest into a symphony of triumph that resonated long after the rains had subsided.